Today, I am speaking with Heather Rovet from Canada. She actually has a documentary out called Who the Fuck is Jason Porter? You can find it on Amazon. Welcome, Heather. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. The documentary is actually Rom Con. Who the F is Jason Porter? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's a great title because it's a play on the whole, instead of a rom-com, it's a rom-con.
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Heather Rovet. I live in Toronto, Ontario. I'm a real estate broker. That is one of my, technically, I guess, my career, although the last few years I've been not as active as I used to be for several reasons, mainly after going through what I've gone through. It does not bring me the same kind of joy that it once did. I still do love helping people find a home or a condo, but I feel that now, having gone so public with my story, I have a bit of a higher purpose, a bigger calling in life to fight the good fight and, expose these predators and the bad guys, if you will, and help maybe one day even change laws and rules around, punishment around these fraudsters and scamsters. But yeah, so I was born and raised in Toronto. I have an older brother and a younger sister, and we're all very close in age. My brother was 1 grade older growing up. He's only 18 months older. So we had like a big gaggle of friends, and both my parents worked. My mom, she still works, but she has retired. She worked at the Hospital for Sick Children as a neuropsychologist, running an entire, department focusing a lot on brain and behavior. And my father was a lawyer. So we lived a nice life. I say to people, like, I had a really great childhood. I didn't really suffer or want for nothing. And, although when I was little, I didn't love that my parents worked, but by the time I got to high school, it was a blessing because our house became very much no parents around, so you could hang out and we'd get into all kinds of fun trouble. I'd go to summer camp. We had a cottage. We'd go to Florida for March break. Like, it was a great life. I went off to university on the east coast of Canada at a university called Dalhousie University. And there I met and fell in love with the first big love of my life, this man named John, and he was American. So we actually ended up moving down to the States, and I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a while, which was really cool. And then I came back to Toronto. And, my first career before I became a real estate broker, I actually worked in TV and film as a wardrobe stylist. So I would go and do all the shopping and prepping of all the clothes for the characters. And that was a lot of fun. Like, it was a good run of a career. I just felt there was more I could do. And simultaneously in 2000, I launched my first entrepreneurial venture, which was an online I think I was like online before Jeff Bezos and Amazon, but I had an online clothing store called divadigs.com, and it was all local little Toronto designers, and I would showcase pieces of their clothing and try and sell them online. But back then in the early 2000s, people still were a bit anti online shopping and still loved the idea of, trying things on. So I was definitely ahead of my time. And, after John and I actually were married, mainly so I could get my green card, but by the time I was 29, divorced. And then I was in another long-term relationship with a man, and I thought he was probably the one I was going to marry and have kids with. And that didn't happen. And we broke up. And then I was in another on again, off again relationship for about 6 years. And then, casually seeing somebody else, but not serious. And then lo and behold, I met Jace, AKA Jason Porter. And I was living in Toronto in Midtown, and I had renovated my condo. And he, at the time, was working for the company that I used to do all the cabinetry. So a few months after, I'd probably been back in the space for about going on 2 months. But I don't know if you've ever done a renovation. Sometimes things need a little tweak here, a tweak there. So the company sent over their new service guy. And on a Monday morning in July, I opened the front door and was greeted by Jace. And he was very...
What year was this?
This would have been, well, it was July 9th, 2018.
Okay.
And I had no idea who I was letting in my house that day. But after he did the work he had to do, I coyly asked him if he could help me do a few other things because I really needed a handyman to help me finish some stuff. So we were hanging up the towel bars, and his phone kept beeping because he had more jobs to get to. So he laughed, and I realized we'd done an awful job, probably because we've been talking so much. So I tried to fix it. I couldn't fix it. I had his phone number. I called him and just I noticed he had left his huge measuring tape at my house. So I called him to say, hey, you left your measuring tape. And by the way, like, I totally made a mess of this. And he was laughing and he said, oh, I'm fairly close by. I'll pop by in about 15 minutes. So he came back over, fixed the towel bar. We went out for lunch. I wanted to take him out for lunch as a thank you. But when the bill came, he actually picked it up and he made it seem like he could expense it on the company as a client lunch. And I was like, oh, like, he made it seem like he was buddies with the owner, you know, not just a worker. His backstory that day when I met him, I learned he had graduated second in his class from the University of Waterloo. And for those who don't know, Waterloo is pretty much the Canadian equivalent of MIT. So he had said he had graduated in computer science, which is like, to graduate second in your class is a pretty big deal. And then he told me that, you know, how he'd lived in California during the tech boom and this and that. And now the reason why he was working here at the kitchen cabinet company people is he was going through basically a divorce, and he was just trying to take a break from the corporate world. He loved working with his hands, and he was trying just to simplify his life a bit. And I was like, cool, like, good for you. You know, like, I'm so open and not judgmental and take people at their word. I just thought that's pretty cool. So after lunch that day, I remember I walked him back to his truck and went home, and I had a huge smile on my face. I was like, oh my gosh, what was that? You know, he's really cute. And the whole time I was with him, I kept thinking, we're probably the same age. I know I look a little young for my age, but I figured we were roughly around the same age just based on histories and stories. And I figured if he realized my true age, he probably wouldn't want to date me, because he probably, like, in my brain, I thought, you know, mid-40 guys want 10 years younger. They want, you know, a 30-something girl, and that I was not. So, but nope.
Were you older than him?
I'm older than him by about 2 years, but we're both born in the early 70s, you know? So yeah, I'm a couple of years older than him, but like, not a huge gap, not like some of the other women you see in the documentary.
Yeah.
I definitely would say we were age appropriate. So after that lunch, I actually that evening decided I wanted to tackle some more do-it-yourself projects around my condo. And being the single girl, I have the single girl toolbox, which is a hammer and that one screwdriver with all the universal piece bits on it.
Right.
And for the life of me, I couldn't find my screwdriver anywhere, but I know we had it out earlier in the day. So I messaged him and I just said, you know, did you see my screwdriver? He wrote back and he said, well, what can I say? It was one of those WTF kind of days where business turned kind of personal. And yeah, I took your screwdriver by mistake. I'm not sure if I should return it or hold it hostage. And that led into some serious texting and flirtation. And about 2 weeks later, we went out on our proper first dinner date.
So
he showed up at my house on a motorcycle. I thought that was really cool. He asked if he could come up because he wanted to leave his backpack and his helmet. I was like, yeah, no problem. We walked around the corner, had a lovely dinner. I learned more about him. I shared some stuff about me. And I thought, I was a little rusty, I think, maybe in terms of dating. But I was enjoying myself, and we walked home. And then we're standing in my doorway, and I'm just thinking, okay, is this guy going to, like, what happens now? Like, should I make a move? And I don't know what took over me, but I leaned in. I was holding my little dog Baxter in my arm, and I leaned in and just went to kiss him. And next thing I know, like, Baxter's on the floor, the motorcycle helmet's on the floor. He's dropped his backpack and he literally like pushes me up against the wall that's right behind the front door. And like, this is the kind of kiss that I say in the documentary. It left me, seeing stars and weak in the knees. And I remember like coming up for air and like going back for more. And that kiss awoke something that had been asleep in me for a while. And I went to bed with the biggest smile on my face that night. And when I woke up the next morning, there was already a good morning, beautiful text message from him. And that's how it all started. And it went from 0 to 100 within days. And within weeks, we were professing our love. And I was the best thing that ever happened to him. He had waited his whole life to meet me. He has a playbook. So by the fall, he's basically at my condo pretty much every night. And we proceed to, we were it. Like I've met my man. Like I am happier than I've ever been. I have the sexiest, most rugged partner. I'm introducing him to family and friends. I had a very steadfast rule that he learned pretty early on that was like, I need to go through 4 seasons with you before we can live together. So he had his own place, which we never went to. And to be honest, I think probably by the end of the year before he officially lived with me, I think he'd moved out because it would be years down the road that I would finally, the truth would unravel. But I don't want to spoil the whole story because I want people to watch the documentary. But in a nutshell, I was in what I thought was a great relationship. People asked me, were there any red flags? The constant millstone around my neck in our relationship was the relationship he had been in before he met me with a woman whom he had a child with. And he was in this ongoing family court dramatic battle over like parenting time and custody and money. And, so I was led to believe. And so we were together by the end of it for just over 3 years. And in that entire time, I never met his son. Now, I, at the very beginning, would sometimes FaceTime with him. So I know people ask me, like, does he actually have a son? And yes, he does have a son. And the other thing, he was very open about the mother of his son. So when, of course, I'm a snoop, people also ask me this too. They're like, well, didn't you Google him? Like, didn't you look him up? Of course I did. I looked up a man named Jace Peretti. And when I looked up Jace Peretti, he didn't even have a Facebook account, but he had a LinkedIn profile that was seemed to match the story, the work line that he had told me.
Was it, or was the detail? Did he have much detail in that profile?
Not a lot, but I don't either. So I didn't really, but everything he said was believable. There was stories, there was photos for stuff that, like, I remember at one point, he showed me, on his phone, he pulled up his investment account. And he's like, look at all my money in my RRSPs. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you're doing well. Good for you, So life was pretty good. We within a year, we're living together. Things seemed to be pretty good. He left. He eventually did quit the kitchen company job and was now actively looking to go back to the corporate world. Got a job at Oracle. Oracle Computers is a huge company. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But he still worked a lot from home because they were a new division and they didn't have a ton of space for him and his team at the Toronto office, which I don't know. Maybe, when I say these things now, sometimes I'm like, well, is it fishy? I don't know. I mean, then COVID hit and the whole world shut down. And when COVID hit, I actually secretly at the very, very beginning was so excited because I'm like, oh my God, we get to spend all our time together and we're, it's going to be cozy in the condo. But probably by this late spring of COVID in 2020, I sold the Toronto condo. That was always the plan. And we decided to move outside of the city, and I found for lease a really cute, affordable house that was on 5 acres of property. And I loved that idea of I love the country as much as I love the city. And being COVID, everything was shut down. So I'm like, this is amazing. We're going to have so much space. And he was closer to his son. So we set up a
So
bedroom
was
for his
renting
son.
his idea or was it your idea?
The condo that I had renovated, I co-owned with my mom and dad because it was in a family property. The agreement with my parents was that when they had purchased a pre-construction condo, and so the agreement always with my parents was that when the pre-construction condo is ready, then they'll sell the Toronto. Like, I had to put this one up for sale so they could get their money out and I could get my money out, and so be it. So that was the deal. But I wasn't, I wasn't worried at all. Like, I knew I would make some money on the sale and I could put it away, and Jace seemed to have tons of money. So I figured in a few years we would just be able to buy a place together and build our dream house. But in the meantime, this house that we were renting was super affordable. And yeah, so we went, and I was living in Aurora, Ontario. I had no friends up there really. Everything's on lockdown. I realized now how isolated I was. And things were, you know, okay as could be expected. I never questioned him when he said he was like going to a work meeting or a, guys' night. I was happy that he had a life that wasn't all revolving around me. But by the 3-year mark, like pretty much around our anniversary, I was just getting so tired of not having met his son. And it just seemed like the world was opening up, but we weren't moving forward. And, I realized it was my intuition speaking to me now, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was because I'm still, now that I have the language, I was still wavering between being completely love bombed and gaslit and love bombed and gaslit. And when you're in that kind of mental state of being, as you know, you don't always see things clearly. Like, I know
Right.
with when people, victims of a romance scam where there's money involved and you're sending your money, you keep wanting to believe that this is just, it's all going to work out. You keep hoping and believing. And so with Jace, what happened, it was very simple, really. He just started it seemed like he was being busy, but busier with work and this and that. And I remember asking him about, there was something happening the following weekend and I just wanted to get an answer from him. And he just couldn't give me a straight answer. So I said, you know what, Jace, you do your family. And by your family, I meant his son and the mother of his son, and I'll do mine. And he used that comment to completely pick a huge fight with me, which led to us never sleeping in the same bed again, which led to him needing space, which led to him stop coming home, which led to about 5 weeks of sheer hell and misery where I'm every night crying myself to sleep at the house on 5 acres of property, setting the alarm because I'm terrified. Like, it was the type of house, if I went out in the driveway and screamed as loud as I could scream, nobody's going to hear me because the next door neighbors were 5 acres over.
Scary, right?
Well, that's why in the documentary, when it starts with the real 911 call. So simultaneously, there's anything, like there's a side story happening, and there's two actually, but the main one is, for a few months, my mom had been asking if I'd seen some of her belongings, and I'm like, no. She's like, did you borrow that bracelet? I'm like, no, maybe it's in the city. She's like, maybe I'll look next time. So she started realizing that her belongings were missing, and it wouldn't be until June when she had in the documentary, they make it seem like it was this big safe, and my dad's like, we always forgot the combination. But I laughed because my dad, bless his soul, it wasn't like a combination safe. It was actually a little key. This big lock box. It was a heavy box that you had to have a key, and a safe box. So she would hide it in her walk-in closet, and the key, and she would always say, like, it grosses me out to think he went through my underwear drawer, but she hid the key in her underwear drawer. So Jace had, been spending in the spring of 2019, before he started full-time at Oracle, he had been helping my parents up at the farm with the renovation, a small little project, building a gym in the basement. So there were times where he was left alone at the farm for hours. So he probably just, let his fingers do the walking, and he quickly found out. And because it's not like he took the safe and dumped it all out at once. He knew where the key was. He didn't want it to look suspectful. So he would take a piece at a time, a piece at a time, a piece at a time. And it wasn't until, and then it's COVID. So my mom's not even wearing all her stuff. It wasn't until she finally opened it in June of 2021, she realized, holy shit, it's all gone. Like I have somewhere in a Ziploc because the detective never thought to fingerprint it, but probably too late now. But I have all the little boxes and the little, the Tiffany bags, like all that stuff for evidence. So that, coupled with Jason and I having this fight where he stopped wanting to, sleep at home, that was such a hard time for me. And
did you suspect Jace getting your mother's jewelry at the time? Never crossed your mind?
We trusted him. We all trusted him.
Yeah.
I asked him also that month long, when he wasn't sleeping in the house, when I asked him a few times, have you met somebody? Are you cheating on me? And he would turn it around and he would say things like, how dare you put that on me? I haven't been this, that fight, you made me feel so bad. I haven't felt this bad since my mother died. I wouldn't be this upset with you, Heather, if I'd walked in and caught you fucking somebody in our bed. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, oh, I think I should just be on my own. I'm better off being on my own. I can be on my own and I can get my son. And I'm like, but look at everything we've started building, and I would just be so sad. And so we actually did go to 2 counseling sessions, couples counseling sessions, and the therapist felt, we could work on us. And Jace never showed up for the 3rd. And I remember I had been talking to a girlfriend and she said, honey, and I finally fessed up to what was going on, because at that point I was kind of embarrassed. Like, I'm like, my life is falling, my world's falling apart because of me. Like, I thought it was me. I thought I had, picked the fight, and I drank too much one night, and I did, I never suspected in a million years what was going to unravel. And so that I was talking to a girlfriend and she said, honey, it sounds like he's gaslighting you. And I'm like, what now? Gaslighting? She's like, look it up when we get off the phone. And I looked it up and I was like, is that what's going on? Still, it's like your brain's like, I don't understand. Like, I just want my boyfriend back. I want to pick up where we left off. Like, I want to forgive and forget and move on. Like, I want my man back. Like, I love my life. I'm scared. I'm terrified. Like, what does my future look like now? I don't know. And it all happened, within a couple of days. Then one day I'm on the computer and I had bought a desktop computer for us to share. So he had his user and I had my user. But often when Jace would be working at night on the big computer, he would use my laptop to watch. He would claim he'd watch a movie while he was coding or doing something. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Now I know he wasn't. But so one day I'm on my laptop and I went to a new website and typed in my, saved my username and password. And it said, do you want to save this? And I was like, yes. And then I didn't realize how Chrome, it's all saved. And so I went in, I was looking and I would see his username and I'd be like, oh, what's his password? And there was a theme, there was a pattern with his password. So I just went to the desktop and typed it in. And sure enough, I'm in and I'm like, ooh. And then I go and I open, Gmail, and there's a couple different Gmails, and the first thing I see and is like, you're a match. So-and-so messaged you. You got it. Like, I'm not an online dater, but I realized, holy shit, he has been cheating. And it's not just with one person. There's a lot going on here. So that was that. My first instinct as soon as I saw that is I actually picked up my phone and I called him because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm like, this is wrong. That's not right. Like, what's going on? He loves me. I'm the love of his life. We're going to work this out. We're going to work this out. We're in therapy. We promised the therapist we'd give it a shot. He didn't answer. So I just start taking screenshot and screenshot and screenshot, and I keep going down further in the email. And then all of a sudden I start seeing Kijiji ad for sale. And Kijiji is in the States, it's like Craigslist. It's like Facebook Marketplace before Facebook Marketplace. It's a place where you can buy and sell things online. And I would see like an ad for like, Tiffany necklace, Tiffany jewelry, this I was like, oh no, 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 no. And I opened it and there was like a picture of, one of her necklace, a picture of a ring. I was like, no. Coupled with, so now like I'm trying to tell my story so people can follow it. We have to put a pause where I'm at that very day. About a year earlier, a girlfriend of mine called me up, and this was at the very beginning of lockdown, and she said, Hattie, I've got to tell you something. And I'm going to tell you. I'm like, okay, what? She goes, I'm on Bumble and I see Jace. I just got matched with Jace, but it's not him. It's his picture, but it's a different name. And I was like, well, maybe it's an old profile. And she's like, I don't think so. Because I know before I met Jace, he had been actively online, and same thing happened, same friend at the very beginning. She's like, I just saw Jace on Hinge. I'm like, oh, and I said, Jace, your Hinge profile's still up, because he had been online dating. I hadn't, but he had. He's like, oh, I'll take it down. I'll take it down. So I figured it was probably just the Bumble profile, but same with Bumble. But she claimed it wasn't. And she went on her own sleuthing device and found out some other stuff about him that, for whatever reason in that moment, again, I didn't go down the rabbit hole that day. I was like, I'm going to talk to him. I'm sure this is all just a big misunderstanding. And because it was COVID, and out of all my friends to discover this, she's probably the least nurturing, tactful, soft friend. She's very in your face, direct. And so my reaction was just like, no, it's like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And of course, again, as soon as I got off the phone with her, I called Jace. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Why did Mel see you on Bumble? And he was like, I don't know. He's like, babe, I love you more than anything. I'm coming home right now. Like, this is a mistake. So, in that moment, instead of listening to my friend and delving into what she was trying to tell me more, I did sort of put it on the back burner, and life just got better with Jace for a while, right? Like, we moved into our new house together and we were so into it together, and it seemed like we were growing. So when I'm in the computer that day, in my mind, I'm like, fuck. What was that I remember I got last year? Oh yeah. So I, me who never deletes anything, I pulled up her email that she'd sent me, and I finally dove into it, which then led me to realize, he's not Jace Peretti. He, in fact, isn't even Jace Peretti, another alias. He is Jason Porter. And in 2011, 2012, Jason Porter was all over the Toronto local, the Greater Toronto area news, because there was a warrant out for his arrest, because he was the original online Romeo, and he had been meeting women online and defrauding them and stealing from them. And he, for whatever reason, back in 2011, when this one woman went to the police, they listened to her and they took it seriously, and he was eventually arrested and thrown in jail. He ended up doing a plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for all these charges. And, good behavior, weak criminal justice system. He was out after 18 months. Wow. So I guess the 18 months he was in federal prison, he had time to reflect. And I always say, I think when these kind of guys go to prison, they meet their cohort, and it's like college for criminals. And somehow he got out with a new persona. All of a sudden, this guy is Italian. He's going by Jace Perotti, back on the apps. He violated his parole by going on the apps, met a woman, got her pregnant, and she was so in love with him, and moved in with her. They moved into, she bought a house out in the suburbs with a swimming pool. He's living the life. And I guess he realized, holy fuck, this is a great cover. Like, I can be the husband, boyfriend, father to the world.
Free ride.
But free ride. And behind her back, when she thinks I'm going to work, nah, I'll just scam and steal. He was actually stealing from the neighbors up and down the block. And he actually even still, there's the journalist who did the first story before the documentary that found out he had even stolen from his own son's piggy bank.
Oh my God.
So yeah, like he's so all of a sudden within hours my world is just completely blown up and shattered at the same time. And it's that feeling. I remember like when I first was on the computer, it's like your stomach goes up in your throat and your throat goes in your stomach and your armpits are sweaty. Like it was like somebody, like an elephant was sitting on my chest because I just couldn't understand. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't understand. I guess that's panic and a little terror and a little trauma all starting, shock. And it just kind of went from bad to worse to like, awful, awful, awful. My dear friend Kristen came over that Friday night, and I managed to like take a lot of screenshots from the different dating profiles that I could get into. And she's sitting on the couch with, the laptop while I'm on the big screen laughing, just going, I can't believe these messages. And she's like, Heather, this is his job. He doesn't go to Oracle. He's not like legitimately working. This is his job. He's a scammer. He's a predator. I'm like, wow. So then later that night, or before actually Kristen even came over, Jace finally called me back. And I was like, okay, be cool, Heath. Like I have the worst poker face in the world. I'm just happy for the most part. I'm born a positive person. So, but I'm trying to be cool. I don't want him to know what I know because I wanted to buy myself some time. And I didn't like your whole world's going like this. Like I didn't know what to do and I didn't want to believe it. And so we're talking and, I could hear in the back, I was like, where are you? And he said, Toronto, we just finished a job site. And I'm thinking, it's like 8:30 on Friday of a long weekend. Like, really? You're at, and I was like, but I'm hearing crickets. And he's like, yeah, I'm in the city. I'm like, huh, I've grown up in Toronto. I've never heard crickets in the city. So he wasn't in the city, but I was like, okay. And then I said something, which at first I thought that's what gave me away. But I just said something like, Jace, I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, like we're supposed to, according to our therapist, we're supposed to be working on ourselves. And here's another weekend and I haven't seen you all week. And, aren't we supposed to try and work on us? And anyhow, the conversation ended. And within minutes, all of a sudden, I'm like kicked out of the email accounts, kicked out. The dating app is like, we're sorry to see you go. So for the longest time, I thought it was my voice that gave it away. But I think he must have logged in and seen like you were last online, knowing he hadn't been online. So he probably was like, fuck, she's on to me. But he did say, well, I'll come by the house Sunday and we can have dinner and we'll talk and we'll figure things out because, he said this will be over soon. I'm like, over soon, like we're finally going to break up or we're going to work it out. And he's like, no, we're going to work it out. Like, I'll be home. I love you. And I was like, okay, click, click. And yeah, so then I'm like kicked out of everything. But I've been like at it for hours now. So I have so many screenshots. I've gotten a lot off onto a thumb drive, but there were still so many. And like, we're both like looking at them and I'm just like, oh my God. And Chris is like, we should start calling these women and warning them. Like, how do we know they're not sending? We even saw some Interact e-transfer, like people have been sending him money. And I'm like, like it was all too much for my brain to handle. So,
wait, so he was scamming you and he was also doing online scamming other women.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the online Romeo struck again.
Wait.
Yeah, he never stopped. Like and Nola, it's not like when I say it's not like he was just talking to one woman. There were hundreds. There were messages in French. He was communicating with people in different provinces. Like he had crazy
other business. Had employees.
Yeah, that's and there was a couple times throughout our relationship where he would come home and he would give me a necklace. No box. He would just put a necklace on me. And I'm sure that's other women's stolen jewelry.
Yeah.
So the next day, my sister and her boyfriend were coming over to the house because as it's noted in the documentary, I had bought a furniture and decor business that I had turned part of the house into a showroom. And Ken was looking for some furniture. So they were coming. So I woke up, Kristen slept over. I woke up probably at like 6 and called my sister and just said, get here now. She's like, what? I'm like, please, please, please just come. She's like, is everything okay? I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'm starting, like the anxiety and the panic is already sinking in. So her and her boyfriend come over. I tell them everything and they're like, oh my God. And I'd figured out at this point, this guy has been to prison and I'm living with, a convicted felon. So, we decide to call the police. So the police come and I give them a full report. And I'm so proud of myself because I've got all this evidence. I'm like, he's been to prison. Like, he's still doing it. Like, he went to prison for defrauding women online. And look, he's still on all the apps. And like, this person sent him money and I've got jewelry and he's stolen all my mom's stuff. Here's receipts for that. And they're kind of like, okay, so what do you want us to do? I'm
Good
like,
job, please.
So they basically told me, well, that's when they asked me, like, has he ever hurt you? And I was said physically, and they're like, yes. And I was like, well, and I'm like, and in my mind, I'm thinking in the documentary, you see all those tickling videos where he was torturing me, but I thought it was our love play, like flirtation. And I was like, no, he hasn't hurt me on purpose, but, yeah, he had been hurting me, but it's not like he had punched me in the face. That's what they were looking for. So the cops basically said, well, there's nothing we can do for you. Like, if your mom wants to report her stuff, it's up to her to go to her local police. And if any of these other women, who he's done this to, come forward, they can go to their police. And I'm like, so can I get a restraining order? And they're like, well, he hasn't hurt you. I'm like, but I'm terrified. It says right here in this document I found, like, he had to go to court for the hogger man
before you'll do that.
Right. And so I said to the cops, I'm like, well, I'm going to change the locks. And they're like, we suggest you don't do that. He's on the lease. I'm like, but is he on the lease? Because his name isn't Jace Peretti. His name is not Jace Peretti. And that's the name on the lease. So as a realtor, I personally think this lease is null and void. So they left. A locksmith came and changed all the locks. And that was expensive because there were a lot of doors and it was one lock for each door. And we had a very good security system that I had put in. So, I wasn't too worried about that. But, the cops did say, if he comes back or calls you or you're scared, just call 911. We'll come back. I'm like, okay, thanks. And so then they left it. I didn't know what to do at this point. My sister, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, okay, Jen, you have to tell mom about the jewelry. I don't have the heart to tell her that Jace, who she considered like another child, part of our family, is the one who's stolen everything. So she called my parents and told them what was going on. My dad was really livid because Jace all summer had been driving around in his older, like his SUV that he claimed he was going to buy off my dad because my dad had a small stroke during COVID and stopped driving. My mom was the chauffeur, so they didn't need 2 cars. So Jace originally said he would help my dad sell it, and then that turned into Jace deciding he'd keep it and he would buy him. My dad struck up a number, but to that day, Jace had not sent any money, and my dad was still insuring the car. So my dad told, when my parents had called their local police and the person came and did a report, my dad mentioned his car, and the OPP detective said, well, why don't you send him a message saying, I want my car back by such and such date and time, and if I don't, I'm going to call the police and report it stolen. That triggered Jace to calling me right away and then sending me a message. Now keep in mind, it's now Sunday night, and he's supposed to be coming over for dinner, but I haven't heard from him all weekend. And he's like, I get this message from him. He's like, what the fuck is going on? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Now, Toronto is not 20 minutes away from Aurora. It's 40. So I'm like, where, in my mind, I'm like, where is he? I think I know where he is because I've, at this point, started uncovering some crumbs that are leading down a path. So he comes home, so he's like, I'll be there in 20 minutes. So that's what led to us, the very scary 911 call that you hear in the documentary where Kristen's hiding in the closet with Baxter. And, like, I just remember were on. At one point, I know I like it was all until I actually listened to the recording of that 911 call, because I had to get all that stuff for the documentary, and it's easy to get through the Freedom of Information Act when it's your own, you're the victim. I thought I had called 911, but Kristen had called them, and then they wanted to talk to me, and that's where I'm like, you can hear it in my voice. I'm like, I'm so scared. Like I'm like hyperventilating, crying. I'm in shock. And so I hand the phone back to Kristen, and I'm running around, like making sure everything's locked. And a lot of the doors, you would keep the key in the lock on the inside, but there's also a deadbolt at the bottom. So I just made sure I felt safe because I changed the locks. But Kristen was like, I think we should leave. I think we should get in the car and go. And even the OPPD or the 911 operator is like, no, just stay put. Cops, they've been dispatched. They're on their way. And we're like, well, how long? How long? And she's like, they're on their way. I think it was at least 40 minutes later from the time he originally called.
Oh, wow.
To when they showed up. It would have been about 40 minutes. Like it took 20 minutes, I think, from the time we placed the 911 call for them to come. So our bedroom was on the main floor, and we had these two French doors, and I had them open like ever so slightly, and it was carpeted in there. So I'm like crawling along, trying to peek out to see, and I could hear the car coming down the driveway. And I'm like, oh, fuck, he's here. And like Kristen's in the closet going, he's here. And we're just trying to, like, we turned off all the lights because we just wanted it to make it seem like we weren't home, and we're being really quiet. And then I hear the key go to the back door, like the back sort of side door that brought you into like a mud laundry room, and it wouldn't work. And then, I hear him jarring it in the front door, and it wouldn't work. I was like, okay, he's going to go away. And knowing that the cops are on their way. And I don't know how he did it, but I would learn it wasn't his first time breaking and entering. He somehow came in through the dining room window. And these were the kind of windows that
breaking.
No glass broke. So he somehow like pried it open.
Oh, wow.
And they're the kind of windows that you have to like crank out. They were, yeah. So I don't know how he got in. Like next thing I know, he's in the house. And I shoot out the bedroom, and you can hear this on the 911 call. And I'm screaming. I'm like, who the fuck you are? The cops are on the way. And you hear us like screaming at it. It's raised voices. And then he walked over to the very large espresso machine we had, which I'm sure he had stolen somehow, because it was like the kind of coffee machine that you would see at a car dealership. He showed up with it one day, claiming it was his from before. Every time he brought something home, it was like, oh, I forgot I had this. It was left at my old house. Like my son's mom brought it to me. So he makes the coffee, and I was like, the cops are going to be here. Like, I'm crazed out of my mind. The cops are on their way. They're going to be here. I know everything. I know you're Jason Porter. I know you've stolen all this stuff. I know you're online dating. And he's just like, so the cops come. A male and a female. The male takes Jace outside and is talking to him, and the woman's trying to calm me down. I'm just like, but like this, aren't you going to arrest him? Like, this is wrong, and he's driving my dad's car, and this is crazy, and like, next thing I know, the two cops are talking. Jace is still outside, but then the woman cop comes and tells me, okay, we're just waiting for the sergeant to come over. I'm like, great. He was here yesterday. He knows who I am. He knows what I'm talking about. He said to call, 911. And they look at me, they're like, she said, no, Jace said that you assaulted him, and that's why he hasn't been coming home. Like, what? I assaulted him? And they're like, well, yeah, we're just waiting for the sergeant, because we're, if he presses charges, we're going to arrest you. I'm like,
wait, he doesn't have to prove it?
Apparently he had some evidence, and I don't know to this day what the evidence is. Enola, I did never lay a hand on him. I can tell you I never. This is a guy. Yes, we know that now. So whatever it was a Photoshop picture. It was, who knows? Yeah. But apparently it was enough evidence that they felt they would arrest me. So now Kristen's like off the phone with 911, but she's still in the closet talking to my parents, giving them a play-by-play because they're freaking out. It's Sunday night of a long weekend. Somehow my family managed, within like another 5 minutes, we have a criminal lawyer on the phone talking to me, representing me. because I'm not getting arrested. I'm a real estate professional. Like, if I get arrested, that's not good for my career.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to prove I'm innocent when I know I never did anything or not guilty. Like, so my lawyer talks to the sergeant, and then there's a bit more discussion. And then I'm informed that Jace is not going to press charges tonight. However, he is reinstating himself in the home, and he has every right to be here. So, and again, I said, are you sure about that? Because he's not Jace Peretti, and Jace Peretti is what's on the lease. And they're like, that's for you to discuss with your landlord. Like, oh my God. Okay.
Wow.
And I said to them, but I don't feel safe. Like, if he's moving in, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't feel safe. And that's when they said, well, we suggest you leave, ma'am. I'm like, leave? Like, where am I going to? My business is in this house. There's over $300,000 worth of inventory. How do I know if I leave, he's not going to pull up a U-Haul and just rob me blind? Because we know he does that.
Yeah.
And these cops and all of that, just, I still, all these years later, you can hear it in my voice. I can't believe how they treated me.
They sound really disinterested in helping you.
Extremely. Extremely. So,
and disinterested in finding out the truth. It sounds like they just took his side of everything.
Yeah.
All the time. But then he probably knew how to play them too, because he's been through it before.
Yep. So nothing was done that night. So the cops leave. They didn't say anything about my dad's car. I was like, what, so they leave. They leave us alone in the house together. And Jace goes into the front room, which also had 2 French doors, which, could have been a living room. We use it as a home office. Takes an iPhone cord, wraps it around the door so I can't get in, and he erases the computer. And then he walks out and he looks at me. He's like, I'll be back tomorrow at 9. I'm like, holy fuck. So whatever evidence because he's decided he wants to live in the house.
Oh.
Because he's so pissed off now, I guess, that I'm exposed him and I'm on to him, and he's gonna
Mm-hmm.
Be sure to tune in next week for the rest of the story.